I want to talk about the excellent possibility in upcoming years that a solar flare will cause a major power outage throughout the world. This is something that is not a conspiracy theory, and we also have historical precedent for it with the Carrington event of 1859. But that was a time when electricity, or basically the telegraph, was in its infancy, and hardly anything was dependent upon electrical means for communication and keeping us all working efficiently together. So, when the Carrington event happened back in the 1800s, it was not affecting the globe as much as it would today. Today, it would actually put everything at a standstill. Now, one thing I want to point out is one of the reasons this is going to happen likely in the next decade or so, and one of the problems you have with this is that, when it happens, you're not going to have any warning. It's not something like you can even predict 3 days in advance. But there's other reasons why this is going to happen. It has to do with basically long-term cycles that the Earth goes through. Now, I'm showing this picture here like you're looking at a Capitol building in a state, and you're looking at a wood-burning stove and a guy chopping wood. Basically, most people do not do this today unless they live in rural areas. Most people today, like if you look at the Great Depression, people had gardens back then. People used coal or wood to heat their home with. Not that many people even had that much electricity. There would be some electricity. There would be a simple light bulb, but see, people were using electricity along with kerosene lamps. This is during the Great Depression. But that's a good example of how, when things stop, things stop. And in that case, it was the economy. But in this case, I'm going to talk about the electrical system going down. Now, I know there's been predictions from Edgar Cayce. I think this guy is actually dead on accurate. I've had another video about 2046, but basically I try to condense everything from the Diebold Foundation. Diebold is actually a word that is used for the operating system of the universe. Now, that is something different in its entirety. Actually, if that prediction occurs in 2046, you're probably not, well, I think before that prediction occurs in 2046, that, the Earth will get hit with a mini nova from the sun. I don't know if, well, it looks like it's fairly well documented from previous geological records. But before that happens, I think there's going to be an EMP well before it happens. It could be in the 2020s. It could be next year. The reason I'm saying this is because when we go through these magnetic reversals on the Earth, a lot of chaotic things happen otherwise. It's like the Earth is not its own little, it's like everything's attached in the universe. As a matter of fact, the sun's energy is attached to other stars in the universe, and they're all connected with these things called Bertram currents. So, and I don't think any scientist even has it down 100% accurate as to exactly, what's going on in the center of the Earth, what causes volcanoes and earthquakes. I think actually the videos put out by the Diebold Foundation actually explain it better. But I'm showing this, meteor strike, Illuminati player card, with Edgar Cayce. I don't think Edgar Cayce ever actually talked about a meteor strike, but he talked about Earth changes where the United States would be split open and the Great Lakes would flow into the Gulf. There'd be a great chasm, and Florida would pretty much disappear. A lot of the coast California coast would disappear, and the East Coast. But a lot of this is actually coinciding with the beginning of the major ice age. Now, this in itself, when we're leading up to these events, when there's going to be a major change in climate, it's going to also be a time when there's going to be more, yes, there'll be less sun spots and less solar output, but there's going to be more chaotic activity on the sun. In other words, once in a while there'll be a solar flare, and one good solar flare could knock out our grid in no time flat, and absolutely nobody is really prepared for this. Virtually nobody. You'd be lucky if you get 1% of the population that's prepared for this. I'm in Florida, and actually it kind of disgusted me. It's like when I came here, I was in a area where more people who were here were hands-on working class people that were, they knew how to repair, do all their own repairs. They knew how to survive without, you know, the modern day creature comforts. They knew how to repair their own cars. They knew how to grow crops or hunt or whatever, drill a well, do roofing and all this type of stuff. But they, you know, what we got now has been moving in my area has been a lot of these HOA, community fee people with swimming pools, and they basically are the exact opposite of preppers. They'd be calling the government and first problem they occurs, you know, and the government's not going to be able to respond. Um, but these changes have occurred over millions of years on the earth, and they become in cycles. But well, like I say, well before this magnetic reversal, which probably, you know, I'm gonna go along with what the Diebold Foundation is. I'm gonna put the video at the end of this. You can look at the 2046 video I did. I try to condense what he said best I could. He's got a lot of great information that's on the Diebold Foundation, but you know, it's just too much. But I'm saying is well before this even occurs with this magnetic reversal in 2046 and these cataclysmic changes occur, I think there's going to be a very, very, very good chance, like almost guaranteed, that well before 2046, sometime it could be in the 2020s, that we're going to have a major solar flare, or maybe more than one solar flare, that is going to actually knock out our grid system. And you know, it's a shame that the government, with all its money, and you know, even if they want to do some pork barrel spending and just upgrade the infrastructure so it's hardened against these type of events, I'd be all for that. But you know, they waste a lot of money in a lot of other areas and they don't, and it's going to be pretty bad because you know, I don't use the internet for entertainment. I use it for information, and a lot of times when I need to figure something out or get owner's manuals and diagrams on something I need to work on, I can find them on the internet. And you know, if that's not at my disposal, that's going to be pretty bad. I mean, because everything, all the knowledge you have is going to have to either be in your head or it's going to have to be in print. So, you know, one of the problems with the internet is not just that it's a conduit for transferring funds to and from people and making communications where you want to buy something from a vendor out on the other side of the country, and you can make a connection and make that transfer. Well, that's an important function too, big time. But it's also a source of knowledge of how to do things. Like in other words, if you know, everything goes down and the grid goes down, I can't go on the internet and look up, you know, how to you know, peel logs and fell trees and peel logs and make structures with, or how to dig a shallow well, or whatever, or you know, how to hunt and skin a deer or something and prepare to meat or something. Fine, you know, you can find this on the internet. So I mean, it's like even the internet being down is going to have a problem beyond just the financial implications. It's the knowledge implications. But we've been going through these cycles forever, and a lot of times during these cycles, like in other words, when we have the usually it's an 11.3 year cycle that is like the minor solar cycle, and then we have a longer cycle that I think it's composed of, I think, 8 of those 11-year cycles, or something like 88 years, and then they have 136 years, 136 of those cycles, which is like a 10,000 year major ice ice age cycle, which we're actually way overdue on. But the thing is, when these occur, and when these occur, and actually when the magnetic fields are collapsing, what happens is you have a lot more volcanic activity, a lot more earthquakes, and a lot more solar flares. Because when the magnetic field starts to reverse, and even years before it starts to reverse, I mean, you know, supposedly the reversal might take like 2 or 3 days, or a day, or 24 hours when it actually occurs. But decades before it happens, it's actually still a time when you're going to get more radical fluctuations in weather, and you're going to have a time when there's going to be more solar flares, because the Earth is not as well the magnetic field of the Earth actually protects it from a lot of things coming from the the universe, and this could very much affect our very sensitive electrical grid. Now, also you got to remember this: as computer components have become smaller and smaller, they consume much, 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 much less electricity. They're also far more sensitive to electrical spike. In other words, if you looked at a 1960s car with a generator or even an alternator, and it had a points type voltage regulator, well, yes, I guess you could fry that with an EMP, but it wouldn't be that easy to fry. But the sensitive electronics they got today are running off of very, very, very tiny microcurrents, and they could easily be fried. Not just talking about the major high tension power lines, which can actually get knocked down, but talking about computers themselves. The other side of it is too that during these times of when we're talking about the magnetic reversals coming up, and we are also going into times when there's the mini ice age is coming up, and you also have the 11 cycles, the 11.3 year, which is the average solar cycles. When these things occur, and there's less and less sunspots on the Earth, there is more chaotic weather patterns that happen. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be colder in every area. Matter of fact, California typically during the major ice age, and also during a stronger mini ice age, California is hotter and drier, but most of the globe is colder, particularly the Northeast. Here in Florida, possibly you would have more hurricanes, but then that's a problem. But then if you're in the Northeast and you have what you call a nor'easter, and it's basically a snow blizzard or a snow hurricane, and you knock down trees, you knock down power, I can tell you, most of those people up in that area, despite them having nice homes or even much nicer homes than this, they have absolutely no way to get any kind of heat or electricity, and they have very little food stored up. Now, if we really knocked out our electrical grid bad, like say for instance, it was on par with the Carrington event of 1859, which I think this is going to be likely. The thing is, the problem with this is that it's not going to be warned. You're not going to have any warning, and you're not going to have a government response that's being able to fix it. This is something that needs to be fixed before it happens. I know when they had the conspiracy theorists out there about the Y2K thing, which I personally thought there was going to be a few problems. I guess there was less problems than I even thought, but I was so confident in the system when we had Y2K that I remember I ordered computer components. Actually, it was from Newegg, at that site Newegg, computer components over the internet on like the end of the year 1999, and the transaction went through, and then the goods were delivered in January of 2000. I actually had confidence it was going to work, because I know they had the reason that wasn't a problem was because you knew that the year 2000 was the date that the problem could have occurred, and they had to do all these adjustments and everything. The problem is with the solar flare, you don't know. If we knew, for instance, we knew that the year 2022 there would be a solar flare on November 11th or something like that, 2022. Say we knew this, then we can prepare for it. The problem is you're not going to get. It's going to be a very hard sell to anybody in the government to do this, because it's not showing the public something for what the money's being spent. Now, I know they misspend a lot of money in the government anyway, and they should be doing this. But it seems, I don't know what's wrong with, people in government are just horrible. They always have been. It's ridiculous. I mean, maybe they haven't always have been, but they are today. But in a time when this happens, you're going to have to be totally dependent upon yourself. And unfortunately, if you get a lot of people around you that are not of that mentality where they're individuals, they're independent, and I'm not 100% independent. I don't know about growing crops or raising chickens or something like that, but I have food storage. The only thing I got is a couple lemon trees. I don't know how much good that's going to do for me, but and I can hunt. But the deal is that most people are not even in that predicament, and also I know how to make things. I know how to shoot guns and all this kind of stuff. I know a lot of hands-on things. So, I mean, I'm not in a piss poor predicament a lot of other people are, but I'd say 90 something percent, 99 plus percent of people are definitely well less prepared than me. And that is a problem unto itself because if you got something and they don't have it, they're going to be going after you. And of course, I have my preparations for my kitty cats. Here's Goldie on the left and Putin on the right up there on their cat shelf. I took that picture a while ago. They love that stuff, and they will be prepared because I got about 6 months worth. I don't know how many months of cat food I got. It's quite a bit. There's more cats now, so I don't know if I got 6 months worth, but I got piles of it stacked like many feet high in boxes and stuff. So if worst comes to worst, I'll hunt other critters and cook them up so that my cats can eat them. So because cats come number one. But the thing is, you gotta actually do things ahead of time, and it's not something like you want to prepare for disaster. You just want to learn how to do things on your own. Because I definitely think this is tough. This is not something that is not going to happen. I'd say, guarantee hands down, it's going to happen. An EMP that's going to knock out most of the grid, and you're thinking to yourself, well, the last time this happened was 1859, Carrington event. Well, that was during a time of a mini ice age too. Not the worst mini ice age. And the thing is, a lot of other times are not recorded that well when this happened because there was no, like in other words, the Carrington event was well noted because of the telegraphs and what it did to the telegraphs. But other times there was nothing electrical out there where it affected. So maybe the event was like, oh, there's strange lights in the sky or something like that, or whatever, fine. And, just something happened, whatever, fine. So none of this stuff might not have been recorded when it happened maybe 2,000 years ago or 500 years ago, or whatever, even 300 years ago. So, that's what I'm saying. I don't think this happened just once. And now the fact that we're going into a more severe mini ice age than the time we had the last solar flare, which destroyed the telegraph system temporarily. We're going into a mini ice age even more severe than that. So and the magnetic reversals, another thing that's coming up, which doesn't happen till I think it's 12,068 years, every 12,068 years, according to the Diehold Foundation. That's coming up. Now, that's a separate thing that's going to cause a lot. According to the research they've done, it looks like it's good research. But well before this happens, I think we're going to have a solar flare that's going to knock out most of our power grid. And people are not prepared at all. Not at all. There'll be, people out here playing golf. They go to clubs at night. They restaurants. They don't do anything. Here this is a workbench I made a long time ago, a few years ago. Did a video on it a long time ago. I actually have my mini mill on this and my mini end mill on this. Very sturdy. Made that myself. And here's some of my knives and stuff, which I use a lot of these things. I don't use all of them, but I always have one on me because I work on cars and I work on things and everything, and I fix things. And very handy tools. This one has like a saw back on it, which is good for cutting small branches of rope and stuff. It's very handy. It's probably for $10, but a lot of people don't want to even spend the $10 on a cheap knife, and some of these cheap knives are pretty good. They don't even want to do that. You really also need to be having extra batteries on hand, a little solar charger with a small, solar panel with the charge controller. Like I have that. I have a couple generators. Actually, I have enough diesel to probably last me 6 months of running it, maybe 5 hours a day. I can power up everything 5 hours a day and charge everything. That's how much diesel I got. So, I can actually have electricity for 6 months. I got enough food for well over 6 months without hunting or growing anything. So, and, it's like I know how to do a lot of things. Here I'm pulling out a cam seal on a car, um, with a screw, a regular sheet metal screw, and works better than a cam seal puller. But these are hands-on skills you need to know. Now, I'm actually an office guy. I'm not a guy that actually does this for a living or anything like that. I'm not a mechanic. I'm not a roofer. I'm not a welder. You can definitely see I'm not a welder by someone who welds you, but I can make two pieces of metal stick together. I'm not a painter, but I got an air compressor with spray gun. I got plenty. Actually, I got plenty of other paint around too. Even the chassis saver rust killing paint. This is an HHO setup I made, put on a Suzuki 4x4, a little 4x4, which actually just sips gas, a little 1300 cc. And I know a lot of different things. A lot of people, they don't want to do any of this stuff. They just won't do it. And when it comes down to, if everything goes down, these people they're probably going to be trying to come to me, and I'm like, yeah, get out of here, man. You people played golf all day and you did whatever you're doing. You're worried about your manicured lawn. If there's a speck of dust someplace or something, you people are going to have to figure it out on your own now. But basically, this is not something that is a conspiracy theory at all, because the glacial cycles have occurred on regular patterns, and actually we're about 500 years overdue for the major ice age, and it looks like this next downturn is going to be the time where the magnetic reversal and all that. What I'm saying is, well before 2046, when it's calculated by the Diehold Foundation, which again, Diehold is a word that was used to denote the operating system in the universe. And a lot of this stuff, even that is scientific, it correlates with religion. It correlates with the Torah and everything. It's amazing how, some people totally dismiss religion, and some people are so religious that they can't see the practical aspect of things. It's another other side of it that's, you could have one extreme or the other, but everything actually is related. Science and religion is actually coexist together very well. And this is something that's been going on forever, so it's not something that is a theory. It's an indelible fact that these cycles occur. And that during these times these cycles occur, you have, solar flares, and the Earth is not as well protected from things coming from outside, from the universe. These solar flares that are coming from the sun and stuff is not as well protected during the times when the magnetic field is decaying. And actually, the magnetic field has been decaying every year. So, I mean, well before the scheduled date, theoretical scheduled date of 2046, which actually they give, I think the guy's name is Doug, a date of, I think it's October 16th, actually, as the exact date, possible exact date, 2046, when the magnetic reversal occurs, which is going to be cataclysmic. It's going to be like we're going to be starting from a clean slate again if we are not well prepared. But well before that time, it's going to be what I think is what we're going to have is these a solar flare, or maybe more than one. Now, one of the questions that comes up is sometimes is, if you have a portable generator, is it going to be fried due to a solar flare? Probably not. I mean, it possibly could be, but some of it, when you have an electrical item that is separate, especially if it's stored in a metal shed, which kind of works like a Faraday cage, it's not going to really be affected as if you have something plugged into the wall and it's attached to the grid system itself. In other words, and besides being in a metal shed, I mean, it's that works fairly well as a with the anchors and stuff and the cables and stuff. That even works as it would, whatever it gets hit with a, electrical impulse, it's going to hit the metal shed and go down the cables that are attached to augers in the ground. It's going to go straight into the ground. So, but also, even during this time, you're going to have dramatic changes in climate, and you're also in the Northeast United States, especially, you're going to have much, much colder winters. Actually, this last winter wasn't that cold at all in the Northeast, but it was actually extremely cold in Chicago and also in Colorado. They recently have had a avalanche in the end of they've had record snows. They've had record avalanches in the end of May 2019. 100-foot avalanche that's not even expected to have the roads cleared till July. That's in some of the more remote areas, of course, but still records. So, one of the things you might want to get is an old Dodge Parawagon like this one. So if you're filled up with snow, maybe you can live in it and make a little wood-burning stove in the back there with a camper on the back, and you're all set for a little while. But, it's like people do not do anything. I'm actually kind of disgusted with a lot of people around here in Florida because, a lot of these retirees are just on an ego trip with, hooray for today and the hell with tomorrow. That's what they're about. And, I'm actually basically a mid-60s senior citizen. Actually, you'd say that. Boy, I don't feel it. I'm going to be out there on my Harley today, riding my patch and all that stuff like that, and riding a bike today, provided we don't get a hellacious thunderstorm. Looks like it's clouding up out there, but I'll be out there anyway. And I'm very active. I'm actually starting to go into the gym every single day, and I'm increasing my workouts and snapping back very strongly recently here. So probably due to the colostrum LD, but whatever. I'm not sure exactly what, but just could be that I got the hellfire back in me again. But to me, this is something that is a absolute reality, and the one thing I'm really worried about more than anything is not this, is the fact that there's so many people around me today that are not of the type that were here when I moved here 23 years ago or so. When I moved here back then, over a couple decades ago, this was a dirt road I lived on. It was, miles of fields around here, and it was like way different. And the people around here, they knew how to do things. And what you got moved down here is a bunch of people from the Northeast with money, or even if they're from the South, they got money or whatever the hell it is, and they're got their manicured lawns with their sprinklers, and everything is just so. And they're like the exact opposite of preppers, 100% opposite. And if something like does this is definitely gonna happen, this magnetic reversal. That's one thing. But I said, well, prior to this, you're going to have the solar flare. It's almost a sure bet. Thing is, there's no exact date when you can predict this. That's the problem. But it's going to be, it's going to be before the 2046. It could happen 2 or 3 times for all I know. But if that happens, forget it, man. I mean, I'd be more scared. I'd be not worried about the implications of the solar flare. I'd really be worried about the people around me that were narcissistic, hooray for me type people, living for today and hell with tomorrow. And they had to have, they get bent out of shape if, the restaurant's closed or something one day and they got to go to a different restaurant, or it rained on a golf course when they're out there. That's what they get bent out of shape about. I mean, if something really, like the electricity went out, geez, I'll be out here running my generator, and they'll be hearing that, and they'll be like, "God, I probably won't run that generator. Maybe I won't even run it." I don't want to warn them, man. And it's good that I'm in Florida because I don't have to worry too much about heat. I got, but I do have a Perfection 1550 oil, fuel oil and diesel heater. I actually use diesel in it. I use that for my heat every year. Now, I don't need a lot of heat in Florida, but it does get down in the 30s and stuff, and it always gets down in the low 40s at least during the winter time, but usually gets in the upper 30s or something, sometimes even down to 20s once in a while, but cold enough where you need heat. And I use that every year, the last 3 years, nothing but that. Absolutely didn't use anything with the heat pump or nothing. But so I wouldn't worry about that. And if you're up north, you want to have a wood burning stove, despite the government trying to outlaw them and stuff, and the EPA and all that stuff. But people don't do that, man. People don't even have like if you're up north, you want to have, like, say for instance, you got natural gas, or even if you have oil heat. Today you got to have your furnace works on basically a computer. It might have the forced air fan is one electrical item. You need a small generator to turn the circuitry on in the furnace that tells it when to light up and when to stop, when to stop putting out so much heat. And you also need electricity to fuel that fan. You don't need electricity to make the heat work for natural gas or fuel oil, but you need electricity to actually make the furnace work. And you don't need a big generator for that. You can use a little tiny Honda 1,000-watt generator. That worked just fine. Not to heat the house, but to just make the electronic computer circuitry in the furnace, work, and also the blower. So, but people don't even do that up north. They don't even do that. So if they get a blizzard up there and they get their electricity knocked out with the winds, but under that type of circumstances, they might only have it down for 6 hours or maybe 24 hours at the worst. Maybe they'll break their pipes. But what happens if you're down for 3 months in the wintertime because it's electrical solar storm or something like that, or I don't, the meteor thing, don't worry about that, because if a meteor hits, to me, that could be any time. You never know that. It's just ridiculous. But what I'm saying is the solar flare thing is a very, very, very likely occurrence to occur during this time when we're going into, deep into the mini ice age, which I think is actually going to turn out to be the major ice age. Before we get into that fully, we're going to have this solar flare, and it's going to knock out civilization pretty bad. I mean, I'm not putting this out to, I'm personally, the way I look at it, when I have prepping and stuff like that, whatever you want to call it, it don't cost nothing. Because I use everything I got that's prepper stuff. It's like I do my own repairs. I don't call somebody in to fix something. If it's plumbing or welding or just adding something I need to, shelves or workbenches or whatever it is, putting in new locks or something on the doors or whatever, fixing a car, fixing a motorcycle, whatever. I mean, I do all the stuff myself anyway, so it actually saves me money. And as far as, if it's something bad, and then we had during the hurricane season, there was times when the electricity was out for a little while, and my generators were doing me just fine. I had my stored up water and all this other stuff, and everything was just fine. I didn't have any problem. I had, this what do you call it, the freeze dried food, or whatever it is, dehydrated food. Just add water. I had all that stuff, and everything was fine. Nothing was a problem. Actually, every once in a while here in Florida, you get the electricity will get knocked out just from a storm for 6 hours, and I got no problem. I just run my generator sometimes, because I don't know what's going to be 6 hours. I mean, I don't know when it goes off for an hour. I run that generator just right out here, just start it right up, run the extension cords, got the refrigerator going, got the fan going, got some lights going. I'm okay. So, I mean, all this stuff I've used for other little emergencies, and other people don't have it. They suffer. There was actually this last couple years ago, they had one roll through here. I forgot the name of the storm. The electricity for me went out for about a little over 24 hours, but only about, not even a half a mile away. About 200 yards away. Some people were out for 5-6 days, but not even a half a mile away, there were people out left electricity for 9 days. Now, if that turned out to be me being out for 9 days, I wouldn't like that, but I definitely got 9 days worth of diesel, and I got 2 generators. I run a diesel about 23 hours, and I stop it, and I run a gas one for about an hour. It ain't no problem. It ain't no problem. So, and it's like, people are just they don't want to do any of this stuff. They live in these HOAs. They live in these gated communities. You wouldn't even be allowed to run a generator in the HOA, for crying out loud. I mean, after the electricity came back on, somebody from the HOA committee would probably come to you and, hey, you couldn't have run that because it's noise disturbance or something. I don't know, whatever. Something. There'll be something they come up with. Actually, to tell you the truth, man, this HOA is as communistic as all hell. But anyway, I got to protect my kitty cats, and I'm thinking about them, number one. So, if the stuff goes down, Mr. Meow Meows, all 8 of them are going to be fine. That's the way I'll look at it. Not just me. We got to take care of them little kitty cats. So, anyway, and this is not, I'm not saying this because I think this is like a remote possibility. I think it's a strong possibility. I think it's a guarantee. Before we get deep into the mini ice age, when it's in the 2030s and stuff, we're going to have this solar flare. It's going to knock out everything. The government could actually make this so it's not a problem, but they have not been, upgrading the grid system so it can handle this stuff. They do not do this job. They're falling. That's one thing the government should do. Make sure the infrastructure is solid, because we as an individual can't make the infrastructure and put up these high tension wires and make them resistant to solar flares. We can't do that. That's why we pay taxes to the government, for that reason, right? They're supposed to do that, but that's one thing they don't do. It's ridiculous. So I say it's going to happen. I say the solar flare is going to happen, and like I said, it could be, if the government was doing their job the way they should be, it would be a non-issue, because they can make the grid where it's not going to have a problem. But the grid is very, very well exposed and sensitive to a solar flare, and it's a given we're going to have one. And they know this stuff too. I don't know what the hell's the matter with them, but maybe they don't care. I don't know. Who the hell knows? And actually, these people out in Tech Valley, like Google and stuff, I'll tell you what, I wish they'd have a solution for this. Boy, if they want to get on the ball, these guys are smart, the Google guys. I know we criticize them sometimes on the airwaves here, but not me, but other people. But the thing is, we got to have a way to, because God, what's going to happen with the revenue for, if we actually we had a solar flare? You talk about stocks and prices and Google and Facebook going down. Boy, they drop in a second flat. You think they'd be lobbying for this? Maybe they should. So if this video does anything, good. Because you know what? The government never does nothing on its own. Never. People got to get it moving. But usually the people that get it moving are people with money, or enterprises that have a financial interest in making sure their enterprise continues. And actually, you think about it, Google, YouTube, and Facebook are big enterprises. If there was ever a power failure, or all these computers got fried due to a solar flare, they got a lot. They'd lose everything. They'd lose everything. It's amazing, as smart as these people are that are on top of these companies, they should be actively, lobbying the government to make sure the grid is hardened. And that's where, a lot of people are critical of these enterprises, which I don't like Facebook. That's the one I really don't like. But, what I'm saying is, a lot of the people that are very critical of these enterprises, you can see where they can really help us out a lot, because they got the power to lobby the government. And why they would lobby the government it was because it's in their financial interest to do so. If there was ever a grid down situation, Google, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all of them, their revenue would go to zero. And what would happen to their servers? What would happen to people's personal computers and all this other stuff? Because when electrical pulse went through the grid, what the hell would happen to all our computers? Even if they got the grid back up, maybe the people's PCs would be all broke. Most of them would be broken, and then they would have to buy new ones, and there'd be a shortage, and it wouldn't recover. Even that alone, just looking at it from that angle. This is where Google and YouTube and all these big powerhouses that are tech giants could be helping us out, because they should be lobbying for this. This is not a conspiracy theory, man. This is a pattern that's happened all the time. It's just that we haven't had the experience of it happening in the modern age when we have a lot of everything's electronic dependent. But we are definitely going into at least a severe mini ice age, and that is the time when you have these chaotic activities happening with these solar flares. It's not a theory. It's not, and it's like you don't have an exact pinpoint date like with YQ2K, hey, December 31st, 1999, make sure you get everything ready. And they did. The computer guys got it ready, right? You just don't have an exact pinpoint date for this thing. That's the problem. It's like, it's worse than it's like you can predict the weather better than you can predict something like this happening. So, this is where these tech giants can really help us out a lot. So, but in lieu of that, prepare yourself and make sure you got enough supplies for kitty cats, because kitty cats are very, very important. Over and out.